So today's topic is about Docker and Kubernetes for beginners, including certification, which is CKA, including live demo. So what you see here, this is what you will learn. I'll talk about that in a minute in detail, but very high level, why you must learn Docker, or specifically called containers. I'm going to use word Docker or container interchangeably, but I'll explain the meaning when we come to what is container, what is Docker. We'll talk about Kubernetes. So in Docker, what is container, what is Docker, architecture of Docker, and why Kubernetes is becoming so famous, especially in last 4 or 5 years, and why everyone is using Kubernetes. We'll look at architecture, brief, very high level overview, pods, and very high level overview about highly available and highly scalable application, how you can build them on Kubernetes. But the star show of today's is about demo, and we are going to run containers or a web server as a container or on a container, which is container platform using Docker. So we'll show how to install the container platform, that's Docker. We will talk in the context of Linux, but what are the options available for you? We'll talk about something called as images. How do you push and pull images? How do you create containers from an image? And how do you launch a website using containerization? And I know it's going to be extensive, a little bit lengthy class, but it will be full of information, very useful information. We'll also talk about Kubernetes certifications. There are 3 certifications available: CKA, Administrator, CKS for Security, and CKAD, which is Certified Kubernetes Application Developer. We'll also talk about cloud is where industry is moving, and why every cloud vendor, be it AWS, Azure, Google, Oracle, IBM, everyone has adapted Kubernetes. So the implementation of Docker and Kubernetes on AWS cloud, which is ECS, Elastic Container Service, EKS, Elastic Kubernetes Service, and Fargate, which is serverless implementation of Docker and Kubernetes on AWS cloud. With that, let's begin with, let's go a little bit back, evolution of development and deployment. And if you're coming from 80s and 90s, the development process used to be waterfall model. The application architecture used to be monolithic, where one big bulky application, you must have heard mainframes. Servers used to run on physical servers, like physical machine with the operating system, and the application infrastructure used to be in customer's data center. Then came 2000 and the era of Agile, where companies were developing in Agile, using Agile methodology. There were N tier of applications where you had a database tier, application tier, and a web tier. And then we saw VMware virtualization or virtual servers. And then your application infrastructure used to be like either data center or hosted server hosted in someone else's data centers. And then came 2010 or onwards, or now the era in which we are living right now, the development process has been in DevOps methodology. You see applications are broken down from N-tier or monolithic application to smaller functionality-wise application deployed as a microservices. And these microservices run on top of containers managed by Kubernetes or tools like Kubernetes, these containers. And the infrastructure has gone to the cloud. So what you should be learning in today's world is containers, Kubernetes, and cloud, and maybe a little bit DevOps. We'll talk about all these things in today's session. So what happened was, back in 2013, Google has been using containers and Kubernetes for quite a number of years. Before Kubernetes, there was a project from Google. They've been building on a project called Borg behind the scenes. And then when Docker came in 2013, the Docker made containerization very, very simple and easy to follow. So Google is the one which started the trend of adapting Docker in 2013, and suddenly everyone started following that containerization when Docker made containerization very, very simple. So if you look at in last 5 years, in 2017 or last 3-4 years, it was 1.12 billion industry, when grown almost now double in last 3 years, and it's going to, or last 4 years, it's been tripled, and it's going to grow extensively going forward as per the 451 research. And that is where industry is moving. Containerized is where industry is moving. Now these containers, from a management point of view, use Kubernetes to manage these containers. And that is where Kubernetes is the biggest player in containerization, where 69% of this container workload is managed by Kubernetes. So these two things, containers, used interchangeably with Docker, and Kubernetes is where industry is moving towards. So two words. Now, when I'm going to use word container or Docker, Docker is a type of container. There are multiple containers, but Docker is quite famous, an industry-leading container platform on which you run your applications. Whereas Kubernetes is the one which you, using that, you manage, orchestrate, and administer your container-based applications. We'll talk about that as we grow, as we go further down in this free class, containers and Kubernetes. So you start, and the first thing you start with is microservices versus monolithic. What is difference between monolithic versus microservices, so that you can understand the concepts? And that is what we are going to learn today. Another thing you should be learning is what is difference between VM and containers. So VM was, or a VMware or virtualization was a big thing in 2000 and 2000 till 2010. And then when 2013, 14 Docker came, they revolutionized the whole game. And that is where containers came. So what is the difference between VM and containers, and why containers suddenly have become so famous? Why everyone is learning on containers? That's another thing you should be learning. We're going to learn that today. But then Docker is not the only option. Docker is the one which made it famous, but at the biggest player, and I highly recommend you to learn Docker, but there are other container options like Containerd, CRIO, Podman, LXC, Rocket, Runc. So you should have a brief idea, but I think focus on Docker strongly. Once you know the Docker or understand these containers, you should be, point number 4, you should be learning is Docker containers, architecture. So architecture we'll look at today as well. Then we'll look at Docker installation options. How do you install Docker and what are the options available? We'll talk about that as well today. So once you understand the Docker installation, then you should be doing Docker containers, images, and what is image? How do you, where do you store these images? Because you spin off containers from those images. So how do you create those images? How do you build them? How do you store them? How do you spin off the containers from them? So once you've started the containers, point number 7 is you do the container state, or how do you start them? How do you do the start, stop, pause, delete, or terminate your containers? You should also be knowing about networking for containers, like networking and storage, different type of networking, how they could talk to each other within same machine, across machines. How do you have the persistent store? Now all of you must have heard of persistent store, where data must be stored persistently. So how do you store that data persistently? And then finally Compose, Docker Compose, which is like multiple applications running inside a container or multi-container applications. This. So once you've understood 10 points on Docker, once you've understand the containers, then you go for Kubernetes. So what is Kubernetes? You understand the Kubernetes, and then you understand Kubernetes architecture. You understand Kubernetes different objects like pods, deployment, daemon set, high availability, auto scaling, troubleshooting, debugging. How do you then install the Kubernetes? There are different ways to install Kubernetes. In exam, you should be doing using kubeadm. Then similarly, how do you install and configure Kubernetes? From an exam point of view, from an implementation point of view, most common is kubeadm. So how do you do that? And then how do you manage the different components of Kubernetes? And then networking Kubernetes, your load balancers, different type of connectivity where your applications can configure, different type of services. How do you do that? Point number 17. And then Kubernetes ingress controller, which is nothing but a type of load balancer. You should also be knowing storage in Kubernetes, and the security in Kubernetes, basic security like role-based access control, security firewall, network policy. And once you have done all these 20 steps or 20 things you have learned, then you're ready to apply for the certification CK 21 step. So I hope that makes sense. I know I went a little bit quicker, but this is just to go because we have a lot to cover. But just these are the 21 steps we recommend you to do, go from complete beginner to a certified Kubernetes administrator. And when you apply for these jobs with this knowledge, that's when you learn and understand. Now, all this with a hands-on lab, not just theory, but you need to learn this with the hands-on labs. You need to perform these. So we recommend 11 hands-on lab for Docker or containers, where you install the Docker, where you, and today we are going to look at some of these things, how quick and easy it is for you to learn. And people say it's complicated because it's complicated if you don't know. Once you know, it becomes very easy. So how do you do networking? How do you do the storage? How do you do DNS logging? Docker file. What is Docker file? How do you create them? And then another 30, total in total 34, 35 labs, how on Kubernetes, especially the more advanced ones, like how do you do the pod scheduling, where you do or configure that your application always goes on a particular node. And now you might be confused right now, hey, what the terminology I'm using? Don't worry, I'm going to cover all those. This is just to give you a glimpse of what all you should be doing. So you'll be doing debugging, troubleshooting, troubleshooting the network level failures, high availability, disaster recovery, all those things in Kubernetes. So these 34 labs. Let's begin with, first of all, what is microservices and containers. I've given you that, oh, microservices there, everyone's moving towards microservices, containers. So what is microservices? Why everyone has gone crazy about containers and microservices? So I mentioned about this. I've already said microservices, containers. I'm repeating this because that's where industries is currently in cloud. So in that, there is a monolithic application. It used to be like applications used to build like that, where all the functionality is in one big bulky application. So this is like, think it's a Uber application where passenger management, billing, notification, payment, driver management, trip management, everything is one application. Now challenge with this is, let's suppose suddenly there is a big suddenly there's an overload on passenger management, or suddenly the overload on trip management. Suddenly there's a lot of guys who are doing trip management, but payment is very small, billing is small, passenger management is less, it's just trip management. So scaling up, if I have to scale this application, I have to scale entire application, and that is quite big and bulky. So if this application takes maybe 8 GB of memory and maybe 1 GB of disk space, I need to scale up and I have to run 100 copies of that. I have to do it 100 times. If I have to modify this, if I have to change this functionality, I have to test the entire functionality, and takes very time consuming. So came microservices. This entire functionality is divided to small functionalities like billing, passenger management, passenger web UI. And now I have to scale up passenger web UI. I can have just this part, 100 copies of this, remaining in maybe two copies of each. So I can scale up that individual part running as a microservices deployed on top of container. And container, I can spin off 100 copies of just passenger web UI. Moreover, if I have to test something, let's suppose I have to test passenger web UI, I'm only testing passenger web UI. I'm also only the related links with passenger web UI. So I have to test this, and this, only 3 parts. I don't need to test entire application. So that is what the benefit of microservices, that is where industry is moving towards. Now, microservices, you can deploy them into bare metal. Bare metal is nothing but a physical machine, deploy the operating system on top of that, and run my application. I can run it on a virtualization. My operating physical machine, a virtualization software like VMware or Zen, and then create a virtual machine on top of that and deploy application. Or I can deploy a operating system and containers on top of that using container platform. And this is the recommended approach. I'll explain you in a minute. That is how you do. So you run containers and deploy microservices on top of that. You deploy container. So these are my 3 different applications, and web application, maybe different applications and running on their own containers, and I can run spin off multiple copies of these, front-ended by maybe API gateway. So that is what containers deployed. Now the question will come, hey, why not in virtualized machine? Why not VM? Or why not bare metal, and why containers? And this is where you need to understand the difference between container and VM. Now again, as I said, Docker is a type of container. So Docker is a type of container. There are other containers as well. So what you do is your physical servers, like nothing but a hardware, which is CPU memory. And here you can directly install an operating system. Here you run a hypervisor, virtual machine in VM. You run a hypervisor, and then you run your virtual machines. So each virtual machine will have its guest operating system. Whereas in Docker or containers, you run a Docker engine on top of, like, or a container in runtime like Docker. And then all you need to do is run containers, application 1, application 2, application 3 in their own containers. And what that benefit of that is that within the same hardware, I can run maybe 30, 40 containers. Whereas if I'm running on VM, I cannot run that many applications because application is big, bulky. If you look at size, here, one application might take me 8 GBs because I have a full-fledged operating system. Whereas here, it'll be a couple of MBs. I can run a web server with just 5 MB, 10 MB. We'll see that in a minute here. My entire application, couple of MBs. And here you can have boot up time, which is like, it'll take probably 30, 40 seconds or maybe a minute or 2 minutes to boot up a Linux machine or a VM or a Windows machine, whereas containers take seconds to boot up, couple of seconds or microseconds to boot up. And that is the beauty of having containers. Scaling up becomes easy. Scaling up, deploying applications become easy. So that is containers versus Docker. Now, container concept, as I said, container Docker is nothing but a packaged application, all its dependencies, a thin layer of operating system, all its binaries, libraries combined together. Your developers will, whether it's a .NET application, whether it's a Java application, whether it's a PHP application, Python, any application you do, you put it into a container and then you run it without any dependency. All the dependencies inside the container itself or Docker itself. So that's what Docker provides. So that when developers develop application and it comes to the administrator or it comes to the server teams should not say, oh, it's not working because dependencies are not met. Why? Because Docker will include all the dependencies, everything, so there's no friction between developers and the administrators. So that's what Docker provides. It provides a platform to run your application and all its dependencies built within that application. That's what it is. So this is the Docker architecture look like. You have a server. On that, you're going to deploy a Docker daemon. And daemon is nothing but a process which always runs and listen your client request. Client in this case be me as an administrator. And this is registry, which we'll see is an image repository in which you'll store your repository. This is where you will store your images. And those images will come and fetched from the from something called as image repository. We'll see that Docker Hub, and it'll come, and from images, I can start the containers. So this is my, for example, one image, for example, my Python application or PHP application. From this image, I can spin off 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 containers. Similarly, this is my Nginx application, for example, I can spin off, or Redis application, I can spin off 4, 5, 6 applications. So that is in a nutshell. I have a Docker container on, Docker host. On that, the Docker process is running, and from images, I'll be spinning off multiple applications. These images are given to me by my developers. So Docker is a client-server architecture, and where it interacts, and I'm getting all the data from here and starting the servers. So this is why my applications are. Now the question comes, hey, I get everything, I can start containers. Why the hell I'm using Kubernetes? Why even Kubernetes are required? And this is where, if you have in your deployment, let's suppose you have multiple machines. You have machine 1, machine 2, machine 3, and you're running 10, 20, 30 containers here. You're running 10, 20, 30 containers here, 10, 20, 30 containers here, because you have to scale. You want to be fully utilizing your application or the underlying infrastructure. Now, if you have 3, 4, 5 containers, it's okay. You can manage an individual. But if you have 30, 40 containers running on each machine, and you like that, you have 10, 15 machines, suddenly your containers become 200, 300 containers. And managing those containers using container platform is not easy. And that is where container orchestration tools like Kubernetes, Mesos, or Docker Swarm comes into picture. So you have different market players who manage these containers, who manage these, orchestrate and manage and start and stop these containers. So Mesos, Kubernetes, and this. So what is Kubernetes? Kubernetes is an open source container orchestration tool. Orchestration means starting, stopping, deleting, managing, scaling up, troubleshooting, debugging, all those things. So it automates your application deployment, scaling up of application, management of application. It was originally designed by Google from a project called BOG, and they donated it to Open Source Cloud Native Computing Foundation. Those are the guys who now do this certification. The organization behind Linux, same company, which is maintained by CNCF, Cloud Native Computing Foundation is the organization. So what Kubernetes provide, or what are the Kubernetes? If you see architecture here, you have a master node. It's kind of a brain. This is to manage multiple worker nodes. So worker node is nothing but, imagine your machines. So your machine 1, machine 2, like that you can have 10, 15, 20 machines. And within these machines, you deploy something called as pod. So Kubernetes doesn't understand the word container. They understand the word pod. And in pod, you define containers. So container pod is nothing but collection of one or more container on which your application runs. Let me repeat one more time. Pod is nothing but collection of one or more containers on which your application runs. So underlying you will have Docker or any other container runtime. And then on top of that, you will have Kubernetes managing these containers as a pod on which your application runs and managed centrally. And now your users, they can come to and access these pods or applications running on pods. So Kubernetes is a to deploy, maintain, and a scalable application. You can edit and run applications. You can schedule application as per node need. So you can say start it maybe 2 copies. As load increases, add maybe 5 copies. And in the program that we mentioned at the start, we are going to give you the hands-on lab on as the load increasing on a server or on an application, Kubernetes will automatically spin off more pods for you. And as load decreases, it will spin off and reduce. Now, if you accidentally delete or something happens to the pod, your Kubernetes will go and automatically start another pod. And that's the beauty of pod or the Kubernetes. It will automatically manage and maintain your application. That's why companies are using Kubernetes, because it will go and start its own, it will manage it. You tell it to say 5 pods, it will run 5 pods always. If anything goes down, it will automatically start something else new. It will kill that and start, it will clean up everything. If the load increases, increase. If load decreases, it will bring it back to the original value. It can also do your monitoring, logging. It can also do role-based access control. Who can access what and where and how. All these are Kubernetes provide. So as I said, pod, I said briefly about a pod. So pod is nothing but your worker. These are your nodes or machines on which you've installed Docker, or it can be any other container runtime. On top of that, there's a process runs kubelet, which is a Kubernetes concept. So there is a process runs, and there you create a pod. And pod will have 1 or more containers, maybe 2 containers, depending on your requirement. So that's pod. Similarly, you can build a highly scalable application. You can have 2. I've just represented here 2 nodes or machines. You can have 10, 15, 20. So you can have, within that, you can start and say deploy, and your pod running on here with 1 container, 10.10.10.3 IP. And then you deploy something called as service, and front-ended by service, so your service act as a load balancer and forwarding requests to these multiple backend servers here. So 10.10.3, and then another service here, 10.10.4. And then suddenly, if let's suppose anything goes wrong with this pod or this pod, my Kubernetes, this master node will automatically start another one for you and then start forwarding requests through this service or a load balancer. And these are the kind of things you'll be doing physically on the lab and the program if you do decide to join the program, which I said at the end. This is when you install the Docker, you have underlying hardware. On top of that, you can install operating system, and that operating system can be Linux, Windows, or Mac. Today, we are going to do Linux, and within Linux, Ubuntu flavor. And that's what we're going to teach in our main training program as well. But you can pick any. The reason why we picked up Ubuntu is because that's one of the most common deployment you have Linux on. Then on top of that, we are going to install Docker. So we already, what Ramesh has done is he's already installed an operating system and machine ready and with Ubuntu. And then on top of that, he will install Docker, and then we'll start. You can have the container, which is with Windows operating system. You have an Ubuntu machine, you have Windows operating system with Windows-based application running, maybe Apache or maybe a IIS or something. You can have another one of Linux with a database. Third one, container as a Linux. You can have different flavor of your operating or containers running on top of one Docker. And that's the beauty of containers running, and you can spin off as many containers as you can, depending on, you can also specify how much memory and CPU you want to give. You can say 1/10 of CPU. You can say 1/100th of CPU. You can say maybe 2 MB of memory. You can assign all these to containers. So that's what is Docker install. So this is the command which he's going to use. So he'll be first doing updating the Linux machine using sudo, and we'll updating in Ubuntu, you update using apt. In Linux, you probably update using yum. And then we are installing, if there is any previous Docker installation, you can remove it like that. But this is where you're installing Docker, and all you need is just one command, which is Docker install. That's its installation done. We are going to enable it and start it on automatically. And now we have the Docker daemon running. And once Docker daemon is running, you can check the version and you can start off the containers. And then pulling the image, he'll also show you how to push and pull images through which you start your containers. So you have a Docker daemon running, and on the same machine will act as a client, but you can have a client separately as well. But usually you put you can also put client on the same machine. We are going to give you run that client command from the same. So we can run docker run, docker pull, push. These are commands for this. And here we are going to, by default, in Docker machine, there'll be no image. So we will be pulling this image from here, which is my, or somewhere on the internet, which is Docker Hub. This is my, we call registry or hub. From here, we are going to pull the image and bring it to the local machine. And from these images, then we are going to start container. And you can start as many containers as you want, or your machine can support based on the memory and CPU you've allocated. So that's what we are going to do it demo. We'll install Docker and we'll bring the image as well. And then we will be saying, if you see here, Docker pull, I'm pulling the Alpine, which is nothing but a thin operating system. It's like 5 MB operating system, Alpine operating system. Or I can say Docker image pull. So I'm getting a image, and then later from this image, I can start a container. So that's what we are going to do. And we can push it as well. Now I'm running a command container and saying Docker run Ubuntu. So I'm installing or running a Ubuntu machine here. Or you can do Docker web server.
So how do you install this Docker on the specific machine, like on the Linux or let's say Ubuntu machine, Ubuntu or Red Hat or CentOS? You can use simple one command. You can use yum install Docker. You can use star. Automatically all the packages related to Docker will catch up and it will install it. If you are using a Ubuntu box, you can use apt-get install command. It is very simple to install it. And look at this, it is installing and it is already installed. So that's why it is saying that packages are there. So it is already installed, guys. So it is just one single command. We install them, all the packages related to Docker. Once the packages are installed, then how you can confirm that it is installed or not, you can use simple command called as a Docker PS or Docker version to check the version of the Docker, right? And you can see that it is a 1.13 version is installed in this machine. As well as if you want to see how the Docker, how do you want to see any container is running inside this machine or not, you can use this basic command called as Docker PS. Now the building block of the container is image. So image is required, and from where we'll get the image? We'll get the image from different registries, different repositories which are there, such as GitHub is there, Docker Hub is there, Red Hat repositories are there, QA repository is there. There are lots and lots of repositories are there. So from there we can pick up, we can pull the image and we can create a container out of it. So let me show you how we can pull the image quickly. The command is very simple. It is Docker pull. I would like to pull the image called as the HTTPD. So now what this command will do, this command will go to the Docker Hub. It will download the image and it will keep in the base machine. This is a Docker host machine, right? You can see it is downloading the image. So it is downloaded. You can see the image by using a command called as Docker images. It is just hardly 138 MB, guys. So ideally, if you want to install the Apache or application or web server on any machine, what you need to do, you need to create a virtual machine. On the top of that, you have to install the HTTP. Then on the top of that, you have install the application. But this image comes along with your operating system layer as well as Apache layer. You have to just bring your files there. I'm going to show you how we can launch a basic website as well. So before doing that one, let me show you how I can pull one more image so you can understand it. And look at the size, it's very, very less size. So that is a major difference between the virtualization and the containerization. In the virtualization, the size goes in the GBs, while in the containerization, the size goes in the MBs. And it is fastly good, right? So you can see that I can create a container in Gphy. It just take hardly 2 or 3 seconds. You can see that how I can launch the container. But before that, let me bring down one more image of Nginx. You can see here, I'm pulling one more Nginx image. Now I have 2 images inside my machine. Look at this. Yes, it is downloaded. Docker images. So I have 2 images. Let me start the container now. So Docker run -IT. IT stands for interactive mode. -D stands for detached mode. So your container will run in the background. It will not run in the foreground. So it will not interrupt any other activities. So run this container in the background. You need to name this container. Let's say that I want to name it as my web container. And I would like to create this container from the image called as Nginx image. So I can put it here, this image name. And look guys, this has started the container. How to check the container whether it is running or not? Yes, you can use command docker ps, and this my container is started. All right, so now if I want to start one more container, I can easily start. Let me use command docker run -it -d. So it has interactive terminal. -d stands for detached mode. Let me give the name to the container as web1, and I will use the image called as Docker IO Nginx. So what it will do, it will create a container called as web1, and see here it is running very nicely. And how many seconds it took? It hardly took 3 or 4 seconds to start the container. My OS is there, my software is there, software is inside that. I just need to put my index.html pages inside that. It will start working.
Kubernetes on AWS has 3 implementations. So AWS, what they picked up is initially when containers were there and Kubernetes were not long, like initially what AWS did is AWS did their own container management, ECS, which is Elastic Container Service. AWS implementation of Kubernetes or Docker containers on AWS Cloud ECS, which is ECS. They picked up Docker or other containers. They never share what is the container, but earlier they were definitely Docker, but they might change it anytime. So they have their own implementation of containers, implemented and managed ECS. But then what companies started realizing is they don't want any vendor locking. They don't want to be tied to AWS. So AWS started Kubernetes. They picked up the same Kubernetes binaries, implemented with AWS services like networking, load balancer of AWS, storage of AWS, networking of AWS, and they built something called as Elastic Kubernetes Service, which is Kubernetes implementation on AWS Cloud, which is EKS. And then they came up with other things like Fargate, which is serverless implementation of ECS and EKS, which means no machine management, no node management, no operating system management. You just manage your pods. So Fargate is a serverless implementation of ECS and EKS. So these are the 3. We are going to give you a bonus of ECS, EKS, and Fargate. These 3 trainings we are going to give you additionally. So what happens is that this is container native, but proprietary to AWS. You have a vendor locking here. This is easy to move your on-premise Kubernetes implementation on AWS, or you can go from one cloud to another cloud, but as long as it's Kubernetes. And this is for workload, serverless workload, good if you run like for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or 1 hour, 2 hours, and then you shut down your pods or applications on containers. So this is serverless on demand. And if you look at this architecture, this is my Kubernetes architecture. So you have, I said earlier, master node. This is my master node, and this is my worker node here in Kubernetes. So what I have, my master node and worker node. Worker node, this is machine 1, machine 2, machine 3, and in these machines, I'm running my container runtime. It could be Docker, it could be CRIO, it could be any other. And then these machines need storage. They take it from cloud. These machines need networking. They take it from cloud. These machines need maybe connections, connectivity, load balancers. They take it from cloud. So this is Kubernetes. You can standalone Kubernetes. Something similar you can do it in AWS cloud as well. So in AWS there is a network called VPC, which is nothing but your network, and then you can create your machines. So here I'm doing 3 machines, for example, or maybe 10 machines, 15 machines. These are these worker nodes or these nodes. And then I need a master node, and master node is on cloud managed by AWS. So you will have access to the Kubernetes cluster, but from AWS console or from command line, which is EKS-CTL, EKS, Elastic Kubernetes Service. So control plane, it's dedicated to you managing my worker node. So I have a network for, or VPC or virtual private cloud network. I have a load balancers. This is a load balancer for my administrators. This is a load balancer for my application or clients or users. And on this worker node, I'm running my pods, and this is networking. So this is EKS implementation on Azure. So how do? You create something called as master node. You then create worker node. And on that worker node, you connect your application through EKS. There is a utility called EKS-CTL, Elastic Kubernetes Service Control, or you can connect from GUI as well, graphical user interface, and then run your Kubernetes on these worker nodes as a pod. So you have a master node, like the way we saw in AWS, you have a master node, which is managed by Azure. You will have access from a graphical user interface, but you don't need to manage the machines for a master node. You'll be managing something called as worker nodes. So you run multiple worker nodes like that. If this node needs networking, you'll be taking it from Azure Virtual Network. If you need from storage, you'll be needing it from Azure Storage Disk. And that's what we are going to cover and explain. What is Azure Disk? These are Azure files for storage. There's a network, Azure network, and then load balancers. So how do you deploy Azure Kubernetes architecture, all those things as well. So this is your Azure network, and you create Microsoft Azure. In that, we call it a Azure VNet. So a virtual network, inside that you're creating a Kubernetes cluster. So this is a Azure Kubernetes service icon in that machine, and you can create it multiple machines. Now, the way I said, images are for Docker Hub, and the repository of images in Docker, it's Docker Hub. In AWS, it's EK, Elastic Kubernetes Registry, ECR. So Elastic Container Registry, ECR. So in AWS, it's ECR. In AKS, it's ACR, Azure Container Registry. You can build your own registry as well, or you can go and buy one of these registries very cheap. You only pay for storage. Or you can build your own custom repository as well. So you have a registry, container registry, and then what you do, you create pods. So you might deploy a SQL pod, database pod, and you deploy your application pod where you have, for example, Redis cache or Python or PHP code. And then my application needs to talk to the database, and this is where the service is. There is another concept we have not covered in the free class today, but in the training program, we'll go in deep. This service, there are 4 different types of services come. Load balancers, notepod, machine IP. All those things we are going to cover inside the program for your service. So this application needs to talk to the MySQL pod. Instead of talking over the pod IP, this pod can talk to this pod over the IP, but we don't want to do that. We do it via the service. Because if a pod IP gets changed, my service will take care of that. I don't need to worry about it. So that is what you deploy. And then you front end, you configure a load balancer in front of that, and you access your application. Your business users will be accessing application from here. So is it for DBAs? And yes, or not every database will be microservice-based database, but your SQL Server supports. So when you're deploying for Kubernetes, you'll be doing and saying, there's something called as, does your database has a Kubernetes-friendly database? There are there are a lot of databases, but is your database Kubernetes friendly? If no, and then there's something called an operator or project, or do you need any workload? Depending on workload, you might want to run a virtual machine, or you need a managed database. But if your database is Kubernetes friendly, like SQL database, and then you have the workload that you have, database workload, which is Kubernetes friendly, then is it how much is ops workload, which means how much effort is required by operations team. Do you want to automate it? Then you run it in Kubernetes. If not, you can go for fully managed database like Azure Cloud or RDS database on AWS. But there are a lot of work for DBAs who know Kubernetes, because companies have started realizing they want the distributed database like SQL Server, which can run across multiple machines, like nodes, stateful, and then you run using Kubernetes, using an operator. In fact, there are a lot of containerized databases, CockroachDB, CouchDB, or MariaDB, SQLDB, MongoDB. So DBAs, you can scale and enhance that. Now, if you're from Oracle Cloud, I know a lot of my audience come from Oracle background. Oracle Cloud, if you're coming from Oracle Cloud, Oracle also have Kubernetes on Oracle Cloud, which master node is managed by Oracle. And you have worker node, which is managed by, all these are what you see in right hand side is worker node. You can run your worker node either virtual machines or bare metal. And then you can go further. These are my machines or nodes, and this is my shared mount point storage, which I've mounted across different machines, and my pods are running from there. So this is another example from the lab for Kubernetes on Oracle. So we do this Oracle Kubernetes as well, but that's again Kubernetes on Oracle